I knew people wouldn't forget him.
Wow. Wow, man. We're talking about XXXTentacion. Such of a powerful voice he was of a generation. I asked my daughter about him, who first introduced me to him because his star was rising, had to be, and you know, I was familiar with some of the songs he had, and I remember hearing, matter of fact, this song, "Look at Me," that we just played, and going, oh, this dude could rap. Right. You know what I mean? And I start going into other music he did, a track he did with Joey Badass, all these different songs that he had done. I was like, wait a minute. I heard more about the controversy than I really heard about the skill set and the music, right? Yeah. And then at that time, you know, we were just looking. We were pinpointing artists that had bars and not just controversy, and that wasn't just becoming social media famous. You know what I mean? For low-hanging fruit, whether it was fighting or beefing on Instagram or whatever the case may have been. People were utilizing that and manipulating algorithms to bring attention to themselves. As we dug deeper, my daughter informed me about some of the controversy of him being abusive to an ex-girlfriend. And we had a conversation about that. But she also said that he spoke on issues in ways, and he utilized words that helped a lot of people of the generation hear themselves being expressed that didn't have access to the same words or the same thought process. And so when I watched this film, it was my first time really getting to know him, who he was as a person and his story. Rob Stone, who's a good friend of mine, who's the EP who helped put this film together, once told me about this a long time ago. And because he's behind it, and I know what he stands for, his credibility, his footprint in this music business over the years has always been based in integrity. And I was concerned, like, Rob, you're taking on a pretty big undertaking right now, man.
It's
like
different,
that. You know, and in this game, they'll attach you to somebody else's, you know, mishaps or shortcomings. And he said, nah, Sway, this is something I really want you to see. I couldn't make it in New York. Rob was trying to put me to work through the Q&A and all that. I said, Rob,
you know.
Stop. All right, you know, because I didn't know him well enough, you know, to really feel like I could deliver that. But I want to welcome him to the show, the one and only Rob Stone from Fader Magazine, Cornerstone. He made some of your favorite artists who they are today. This is my brother. We once saved his life. Rob Stone.
Yeah, Rob.
Thank you, Sway. Thank you, indeed.
What up?
Another young man who's here, who, to me, he personifies the spirit of which this culture was built on. You know, someone who loves creativity. I think someone who stands by culture, who believes in community and what we try to do as we express through this lens. And he's been able to keep his finger on the pulse of it and identify when things are special. And when he sees things that are special, he dedicates and commits himself to bringing that to the masses. Last night I bumped into him, and he's working over at Capitol Records right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's go.
Okay, and he's head of A&R. I don't know if that's his title, but he's head of A&R. All right, that's his title. Okay, so but
right, giving out titles.
Yeah, rightfully so, because the first thing he said to me is, "Sway, man, come over to Capitol, man. You got a lot of artists that's running through your platform."
Facts.
Okay, and I was like, you know what? I like this man's energy because he got that energy we had when we started, right, Rob?
That's for sure.
But one of the things I saw that stood out in this film is I saw him trying to level with Jase, this artist, and trying to keep him grounded after he had been through jail and had just got out, and really was trying to put him on the right path, which is hard to do with an artist sometimes. But I could tell that he cared about him as a person. And so he's up here to tell us and give us insight. If you're a fan of XXXTentacion, if you want to know more about his story, please call up and ask any questions. Solomon Sounds is here. Citizen. Solomon.
That was an amazing introduction, Sway. I'm very grateful. Very great.
Do you see any script?
No, not at all.
It comes from the heart. Like, I think
not at all. I'm very humbled.
I think about people I meet and people who I consider pillars. You're very important.
Thank you so much.
You identified, when you think about that era, I call it the Rolling Loud era.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
The Rolling Loud era was under a lot of scrutiny with the culture at one point, especially artists, how the younger artists wanted to express themselves, you know, mumble rap and all this different stuff that, you know, a lot of us older guys our gatekeepers.
Yeah, couldn't connect to it at the time.
Couldn't connect to it. And I was one of those older guys that said, y'all don't see what's happening.
Yeah.
They said things about NWA when they came out, similar to what you're saying about these artists. They said it about the Sugar Hill Gang when they came out, similar to what you're saying about this artist. They said it about 50 Cent. They said it about Eminem. They said made these same comments, which means sometimes we got to sit back and listen, get off our high horse, and understand what's going on in this generation. At the time that you met him, Jase, when did that happen?
This was late 2016.
Okay.
When we met, and when we met, he was still locked up, but he was just starting to really like make a lot of noise. So he was starting to go viral for the first time. People were finding out about the music. People were finding out about his charges. There was a lot of internet chatter around him, and it was just a really special time. And he was a vulnerable kid, but in the same space, a huge superstar. So I think, like, part of what really excited me about him was his complexity. It was like the kid that makes this great record can make this different type of record and blend genres, and he just had such a intelligent disposition to himself, and I just wanted to help him, man. I saw so much potential and hope in his eyes, and I just saw him as like being the future and the first of his kind.
That's 2016. So he was 18 years old?
Yeah.
He was 18 years old at the time you met him. He was already in jail for charges of?
Well, he was in jail because he allegedly stabbed his former manager. Okay.
And that didn't scare you away.
No, because his former manager stole from him, and I don't steal, so I had nothing to be afraid of.
Okay.
You gotta look at the prereqs.
Facts. I was like, maybe he got something. He got it.
Well, but that's a very, very extreme response, to somebody stealing. You stab them. Depends on how much they stole, perhaps. I don't know. But what we found out about him, what I think you guys did great in making this film, is you told his story. When you put it in context, he just didn't grow up and become somebody who became abusive, somebody who became violent. Well, what you see in this film, you see him literally beating somebody to a pulp, filming it on purpose, and knowing that the result of that is going to bring him more attention. You didn't think there was a wire loose? You know what I mean? At that point, like something's wrong psychologically with that whole approach.
Right.
Here's the thing. It's that, like, at that time, there was a lot of things going on where a lot of kids didn't care about, how they got to where they were going. They just cared about, the destination, whether it was just going viral or getting attention. So he wasn't the only kid that was doing crazy things like that. That was, like, the era of, like, the Boont gangs and 6ix9ine and all these guys, and they were all doing things to make sure that they were able to garner a huge amount of attention really quickly, regardless of the morality behind what they were doing. But also, as these kids were marketing geniuses.
Yeah.
You feel me? Had they would have had different circumstances, maybe they would have been chief marketing officers for Coca-Cola or some other Fortune 500 company, because they know how to elicit a response out of people. So I'm not saying they was doing it. I'm not saying they went about it the best type of way, but they understood not only culture, but like human psyche and behavior and how to get a response out of people. Even if that response, was somewhat negative, it got people talking, and they understood what they needed to do to get attention.
And he talked about that, like what you guys did in this film, and what you'll see, citizens, when you watch it on Hulu when it premieres tomorrow, is you were able to collect so much footage and put it in a great sequence, even of the digital imprints that were left, that he left, and that were left about him. You were able to find all of this footage that was online, that was on, that you filmed in rooms and the whole nine. And he expresses that if I beat this dude up, we film it, it's damn near going to go viral. I want to go beneath that, though, because there's other ways to go viral, right? what I found fascinating is his background, his childhood. Both his parents from Jamaica, right?
Yep.
Okay. It was said in the film, it was alluded that his father was pretty strict and abusive. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't want to necessarily say abusive, but he
Okay.
was this disciplinarian, as most men will be in their homes, especially with a son. So, I don't think he was like overly abusive or anything like that. I think maybe there may have been some domestic, disputes with his mom and his dad. Unfortunately, maybe some that he saw, but I don't think there was like anybody overly abusive to him as a child. But he saw a lot of things that a child shouldn't have, and I think it affected him negatively.
I think that's the first thing I thought of. There's a point in the film where they talk about, you guys talk about his father having to go to prison, and I think he was 10 years of age at that time, and that's when a bell rang in my head, having to be like,
Okay.
okay, because he
This
loved
is
his
the
father.
beginning of the
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We see that all the time, right? And he loved his father, and his father was instrumental in his life. Would you say that was the catalyst to the behavior that he started to exhibit beyond that point? Because even his grandmother was like, he's a bad kid. He's a bad seed, The grandma, everybody was like, yo.
Even grandma. You know what it was? 100%, 1,000,000%, 1,000,000,000%, him losing his dad was the catalyst, because it's like, how do you even explain that? Like, I've had conversations with Cleo, and that was rough to explain to a 10-year-old that, your dad is in jail for moving plants from one place to another, and it's like, even, his dad is like, he was doing what he had to do to try to take care of his family, you feel me? So it's like a bigger thing. It's like, the disenfranchisement that his dad faced and, pushed him to, trying to hustle and do what he got to do to take care of Jase and his other kids is like, ultimately, it's not that it's not his fault, but it's just it's a cycle.
It's a cycle, right?
It's a cycle. So it's like you can't even really blame his dad for being in this country, being an immigrant, trying to survive however he can. He gets caught up, and then his son, who's looking at him as a superhero, loses him, and now is so upset, doesn't necessarily know how to deal with his emotions, and doesn't have the father figure in his life to help kind of mold him and kind of steer him in the right direction, and to kind of help him as a young man to deal with his anger, to deal with that testosterone, to deal with those things that, no disrespect, a woman may not be suited to help you deal with as a young man.
See, I need Solomon to manage me, because he gonna he
Yeah, no.
gonna remix everything. I like it, man. But you giving us this insight, because I didn't know him. That's why I'm asking these questions, and I don't want to. He's not defined by every controversial thing that happened in his life.
Sure.
What shined to me is his creative process. Some of these songs we played, how he learned how to make music, how he learned how to execute and get his thoughts and his creativity. I thought that was incredible. But I also felt like there was a moment when we bring up his mom, Cleopatra Bernard, that she said in his youth, because he was having so many problems, anger issues, that she took him to the doctor, got him diagnosed, and they diagnosed him as being bipolar at a young age. But culturally, where she's from, I'm assuming she was, speaking of Jamaica,
Of course.
that you don't give a kid prescription medicine. You kind of deal with it, figure it out, unwrap it, and, and then hopefully that kid be okay or find balance. So she chose not to give him prescription medicine. Do you know how she feels about that today?
Listen, man, I have a new daughter. My daughter's about to be 11 months old, and God forbid if she was
Congratulations.
thank you so much. But God forbid if my daughter was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, giving her medication would probably be one of the last things I'd do. Just to be honest, it's like, from where we from, I think we always have a certain skeptical, kind of feeling about, the medical field and, medicine and those type of things. And that's for good reason. It's because, we as a people haven't been treated great, by the medical society of this country. And, so it's like, are you going to give your child that you love things that you don't understand? Like, we don't necessarily understand what's in Ritalin, what's in all of those things. So it's like, I understand what Cleo was trying to do when trying to just get him, you know, therapists and trying to go other ways outside of just like drugging up a kid. Because when you see some of these kids that, you know, are drugged up or, you know, high on whatever antidepressant medicines, they're a shell of their former selves. And, you know, no parent wants to see their child like that. So as difficult as it is, you know, I think that she did what she thought was best, and I hope that she has no regrets over it, because at the end of the day, she was a young mom. She wasn't really suited.
Yeah.
She was 17 years old when she had this kid, so she wasn't really suited. This didn't come with no instructions booklet.
Right,
And
no
I can
manual.
tell you, because I have a kid now, so it's like me with a beautiful baby girl, I don't know what to do certain times. So I couldn't imagine her, you know, with a son that having obvious problems, and there's nobody to really come to give her answers, to tell her, yo, this is what you should do, or maybe talk to this person, or take this approach. So she was just doing her best.
No, that makes sense.
Wait, hold on. Did he ever self-medicate though?
Here I'm sure he did, and I've watched him self-medicate in certain ways.
With
whether
what?
It's,
You recall?
I do recall. Sometimes it was him smoking weed. Those are some of my favorite times of just us being together, because he was just so cool. He was so happy. He was laughing, and it was one of the very few times where it was like the weight of his world wasn't bothering him. You know, he felt kind of free. So I really enjoyed when he used to smoke. Outside of that, he would do shroom tea. He wanted to try ayahuasca and DMT and all these things, which I'm not sure he ever got to try, but he wanted to try those things because he was dealing with a lot, you know, with his mental health, and he felt like maybe those things would free him or give him some type of perspective that would help him deal with his emotions better. So his medication process was literally just about like healing.
He when you see this film, to your point, he was extremely smart, a very intelligent young man, very insightful. He had a great foresight as well. Really keen when it came to marketing and branding and understanding the world around him and what was going on in the music business. But I don't think any of us really have a great understanding. You can't explain fame and celebrity. You can't guess that until you go through it. Nothing you think is what it is, right? Until you actually go through it. And to me, that's a drug in many ways, and it plays a part on people's behavior. How do you think the fame affected him? The celebrity, because as it started growing, you guys often showed, wow, look, I got 100, 200, wow, I got 1,000 people on Instagram. Great. You know, when he was in his mugshot, he was excited to see that when he Googled it. You know what I mean? But that's a mugshot. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Sure.
How do you think that affected him as a person? Fame.
Well, it may not have like seemed like this to the public, but I think he handled the fame, you know, as gracefully as he could. You know, he wasn't into, like, you know, a lot of people would get successful and, you know, their priorities would maybe change. He was never really into anything materialistic. He was more so of like a man on a mission. Like, unfortunately, he knew that he wasn't going to be here for a long time.
And he said that over and over.
Over and over again. So even myself, who he would say that to, and I would kind of be looking at him like, nigga, you crazy. What are you talking about? You're going to be an old man with grandkids. And he would just have this definite approach.
Like, what did he say to you? Did he literally
He would say, no, I'm not.
Wow.
You might, but I'm not. And he would be so sure of it, it would be eerie. And I'm just kind of in my mind, like, this little nigga's crazy. You feel me? Like, what you mean, bro? Like, you're going to be here. You're going to be here. You're going to be here to see your kids and your grandkids and everything that, you know, we're building, you know, you're going to see through. That's the way I saw it. There's no way ever that I would have ever thought things would have panned out the way they did.
Rob Stone is here with us from Fader Magazine. We got Solomon Sounds with us as well. We're talking about the documentary Look at Me premiering on Hulu tomorrow.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for all of this insight. I'm curious because him kind of speaking his fate into existence a bit, and I'm wondering if you started seeing, you know, when you're, for someone who feels like death is approaching, oftentimes you hear that they want to reconcile with anyone that they may have had issues with, you know? And in the case of X, I'm thinking about beef that occurred with Drake, you know, with people saying, yo, Drake took your flow, and look at me. There's also, the internet has wild conspiracy theories about Drake's involvement in his death. Do you know if they were ever able to have a conversation, what that conversation was like? Did he gain peace from someone who was a superstar who had heights that he was trying to reach?
I think off the record, he as we all are, he was a Drake fan. Like, he loved Drake. I think the thing that kind of hurt his feelings was, you know, Drake was this massive superstar that we all looked up to, that he looked up to, and, you know, he didn't necessarily, he felt the way because he's like, yo, Drake, you reaching out could have probably just changed my whole situation. Instead of, you know, doing that, you just took my song or whatever the case may be. Not, you know, and, you know, I'm sure Drake had whatever reasons that he had maybe in his mind. Oh, this is the way I can help the kid or bring some attention to him or push the culture through or whatever the case may be. I don't necessarily think it had to be like nefarious or whatever the case may be. But, you know, he just felt at the time that, you know, Drake could have just done so much more to help him. Not even in terms of spending money or anything, just a reach out would have just meant so much to him. So I think he was a little upset that he didn't have that. But, you know, it was never anything personal against Drake. I think this was another example of just, you know, taking advantage of an opportunity and the moment and, you know, just really just using the circumstance to market himself and kind of position himself at the top of the business.
But they never got to speak, at least from what you know.
No.
Okay.
No, he did reach out to his mom after he passed and was super grateful, and you know,
That's
we
beautiful.
definitely appreciate it because he didn't have to do that,
No.
and you know, he's a class act for that, and we really appreciate him for that.
Wow. So I have a question, I think, listening to both of you now, for both of you, and I want to start with you, Rob, because we've been blessed enough to witness and experience the many decades now of hip-hop. Like, we remember the beginning, then there's this golden era, and where would you guys, what label would you, if you can, I hate to use the word label, but how would you how do you see 2010 to 2020? How would you describe, because as a unit and a team here, we've watched it, and it's been very interesting to me, and it's not fair for me to call it, like, I almost put an asterisk by it, because so many of the artists, and because I'm inspired, this question was inspired by you, Solomon, because I think about the intentional things that were done to become famous. You know, I think about this drug era that it was much different than in the 90s where we were all like smoking chocolate tie and bouncing and running around in Timbs. Like, this was so different for me sitting here watching as an artist, as a fan, and then living through where would you how would you put, you know, 2010 to 2020?
I think it's a great question. I mean, me coming up, you know, when Sway was still in San Francisco,
Right,
and bringing Biggie to, you know, to the station.
Thank you, Rob, for that.
Oh, shut up,
Thank
Sway.
you, Rob. They don't believe me, Solomon.
How he had to look at
Sway
even
was the
Solomon
first
looked over
one to
at
have
you like,
Big Up at the
wow.
radio.
Can you say that again, Rob?
Rob, no, you don't have to.
For the world.
Yes. And Flex gives credit to King Tech and Sway for the blueprint of doing radio in New York. Funk Flex said that.
I'm out, y'all. Y'all take
Legendary.
So, but yeah, look, my personal experience,
Yeah.
I did not know about XXX. Solomon, to his credit, is one of the great executives out there, and he kind of knew he needed Fader to document this kid. And my team, Fader's always been about giving artists of, you know, that don't have a voice, and trying to be there early, from Kanye to Drake, you know, to the White Stripes and the Strokes. We've always tried to give them a platform to speak. So we did that early on, and we captured this incredible footage, and it made me realize, as you know, I didn't take a look at it until he passed. And once he passed, I started looking at the footage we had, and we have a 3-hour interview that he sat down, and you can see this kid was complicated, and he was tortured, and he was brilliant, and he was all these things, and I dismissed it. I never listened to a song of his.
Right, I get it.
So I started opening my mind and watching him, and then seeing, you can see the bipolarism come in, because he came in as Josh Say for some of the interview, And then all of a sudden you saw him kind of get, like Solomon talked about him being a child, and he thought he was going to be a giant. It's because XXX was a giant. It was his ego, alter ego, that and you saw him switch from Jase to XXX in the interview. And like you could almost see his eyes were different. His demeanor was different. And I think the film uncovers that. And, you talk about dads. I had my dad most of my life. It was very influential.
Yes.
One of the first teaching moments with him that I remember, 5, 6 years old, he sat me down to play chess. And the most powerful piece on the board is the queen. But the pawn can cause crazy.
Havoc.
But it's cause and effect. And his whole point of it was every time you do something, and he wasn't teaching me chess, he was teaching me life. Every time you do something, it is an opportunity for you to do something better, or a missed opportunity, or someone against you is going to do something to you. So the cause and effect here is what intrigued me, that there could be two things going on, or multiple things going on. He's not just good and bad, and he was everything, right? So he created this havoc in his life, and that was an important story to tell. It's not, we weren't passing judgment, and that's, when Solomon and I first got together and met with Cleo, it's, we got to tell the good, the bad, the ugly, or I'm out. And to her credit, and to Sabah Faloyan, who made an incredible film as director, that was our mission, that he brought all of us together to tell this really important story, and you decide what it is. But we know we're not treating people on all sides, Geneva to X, the right way in society.
Geneva is his ex-girlfriend that's when she alleged that he beat her, and you guys showed a picture of her face beaten to a pulp, and you also showed a lot of the friends around him, the members only crew, who didn't believe her, and as an onlooker, and it just felt like he was surrounded by folks who were in denial, right, or enablers, because even his own mom after a while has said that, she apologized for what he did, but in the film, he didn't admit to doing it. Did you believe he beat her?
Well, at first, no, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. And, I feel guilty, but I didn't believe it because I didn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to believe it. I saw these gruesome pictures, and it was a lot easier for me to be like, nah, that's my guy. He wouldn't do that. And, that's how it was. And just, as time, went on or whatever, there was so much against Geneva, and, myself and a lot of fans and a lot of people that had no active participation in their relationship, we all have no right to be adversarial towards Geneva at all. You feel me? We weren't there. We weren't part of it. She wasn't perfect. She slept with his friend or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
That wasn't the answer to do what he did. Not saying that she was perfect or whatever the case may be. And, that even leads into the whole pregnancy thing of, that was, I think, what kind of basically made the whole thing not like spiral out of control, but it's what made the headline even more gruesome, is that, she was allegedly pregnant, which, we found out, in the film that she wasn't, but it doesn't really take away the severity of what happened. So did I know in the beginning? No. Should I have done more research and looked into it more? Yes. Should I have been more compassionate to her and to what she was going through? Of course, 100%. And I think even in this space now, it kind of basically just teaches us, like, where it's like, yo, this stuff happens. And it's not just your favorite artist. It's your uncle. It's your neighbor. It's your brother. It's your cousin. So it's like, I think there has to be more of an open dialogue about, like, how do we deal with this, and how do we let people know that, like, yo, this isn't okay. And there's better ways to kind of deal with your anger or whatever the case may be. Because he loved that girl. Yeah. And we all know that he loved that girl. And it might have been a toxic love, but she loved him too. Even after, they went through everything that they went through, there was a point where, You know, he's at the height of his career, touring, big records, everything is going crazy. He has a no order. He has basically a stay away order of protection from her.
Yeah.
And they are together. They are together
the whole time.
They're on. It's on the low, but they're together. They're still in love. They don't care. You feel me? There's there's nobody, even with all the time that he was looking at and all whatever, there was nothing that could have kept him away from that girl.
And that's why he got the more charges put up against him for tampering with a witness. I want to say this because I want to make sure I say this before we have to conclude. This documentary isn't all about that controversy. It's really about understanding a person and their journey and what they were going through at a given time that many of our youth have gone through during this time period and will be able to relate to through his trial and tribulation. He was a very introspective person. He was ahead of his time. It was said that he was way beyond his years, even as a kid. He was a beautiful man, in my opinion. Even though I didn't get to meet him personally, he had beauty in his heart, but he had what we all have, those other sides. We have layers to us.
Absolutely.
He didn't get a chance for redemption because his life was taken from him, right?
Yeah.
Something he spoke, many will say he spoke into existence. But when I talked to his mother last night, and I was leaving a little early because I was so tired, and she said, Sway, come back. You haven't seen the redemption part. I said, I got to go back and see what she means. And when I came back in the theater, his hair was already indigo blue.
Yeah.
He was Indigo X, who, in my opinion, is the person he became, right? And even you watch the video, I think it's the sad video, where he kills his old self. We heard Jay-Z do a song, Kill Jay-Z, of getting rid of those old habits and things about him that kept him anchored. And it felt like this young man was reaching that point of understanding, how he dealt with conflict. Y'all would say he would meditate. He would take seconds before he responded. Who was he in the end? Is what I want to know.
And in the end, he was well into his journey of becoming his supreme self, his supreme being. He understood what he had to do to get to where he was, but then he understood the responsibility of carrying a message. That's when it became all about philanthropy. It became all about kids. It became all about giving back. And I remember at the time I was urging him. I was like, yo, we could get some people out here to see you doing this and to see what you got going on. And he was against it, so strongly against it. He was like, this is not genuine if I'm doing this for somebody to see it. So all this amazing, that's one of my regrets is that I listened to him because all this amazing philanthropy that he did went unknown. Like, unless you were there, unless you were on the receiving end of it, you would never know. And, that's the way he wanted it. But I wanted to make sure that the world knew that he wanted so much more. And, I think we've seen that in the film, too, in terms of him wanting to just change his perspective, change his message. You saw on the Instagram Live that he put that he, apologized for some of his bad behavior. He wanted to make sure people knew and parents knew that he wasn't trying to lead their kids down a dark path. And that's who he was. He was encouraging these kids to write in journals, to deal with their mental health in creative and positive ways. And he was basically using himself as almost like a martyr of like, yo, look what I've been through. Look what I overcame. Look what I was able to build for myself. Look how I'm able to change my life around, even though I did these terrible things. And that's what we all ultimately hope that people get to take away from this film is the opportunity of redemption for young lives. It's like no matter where you started, you always have the opportunity to turn things around, to make a positive out of your negative situation, to try to use your experience as a way to kind of help somebody in the future. And, that's exactly what Ja did. He sent out a kite. He talked about all these things that was important to save somebody. He talked about mental health, suicide, what it felt like to be alone, things that most other artists wouldn't do. So for him, it was all about just saving somebody else. And I know for a fact that he accomplished that mission. And I know that because every day, you know, me, myself, Cleo, everybody, we get all these DMs from these fans that just thank us because his music, his lifestyle, his example helped them to not commit suicide. It helped them to learn how to deal with their emotions in a healthy way. And I'm forever grateful for that, forever.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, Solomon. Thank you very much for this honesty and transparency and giving us this insight. Rob Stone, continue carrying culture the way you have, man.
Yeah.
You owe me nothing for saving your life. It's all good, Rob. You know, just give me a new Fader Films jacket. That'll be good.
Done deal.
Solomon, let's stay in touch.
No,
when you come to New
absolutely.
York, I'd love to continue this
Yeah, for
conversation.
sure.
I'm in New York.
30 minutes doesn't do this justice. Send my love to his mother.
Absolutely.
Saba
Sabah Faloyan.
Faloyan.
Who was a big part of us getting to where we got to. And I also want to thank Hulu. This film, it was very important to Solomon and I to surround it with powerful women, from Belisa Balaban and Beth Osizik at Hulu to Darcy McKinnon to Geneva to Cleopatra, Chloe Campion, like just amazing women on this project. Really made it happen.
Great project, and it's going to raise a lot of conversation.
Yeah,
So
well.
his work is still being done, and by no way are we condoning a lot of those actions that you guys show in this film. But I think it's great to open up conversations because of these actions, and I think you guys were brave. We often talk about Pac being 25 and Biggie being 24 when their lives was taken. This young man did all of this in a 2 to 3 year period, really let's say 3 solid years. At the age of 20, his life was taken. Wow. Think of who you were and what you were doing at 20. And so please check it out. Look at Me, premiering on Hulu tomorrow. Thank you, Rob, Fader Film, Solomon.
Thank you.
Great job, man. All right. Appreciate you
so much.
Absolutely. If you want to hit Solomon for more questions, hit him directly.
Yeah, facts. Solomon Sounds.
Solomon Sounds. And Rob Stone?
I am Rob Stone.
I am Rob Stone. Up next, man, we're going to keep it Bay Area. Right now, we got the one and only Mazin.
I feel like you're being biased.
Oh, man, come on. We got Mazin up in here, and then I'm going to put Killer Fonte up in here. We're going to put them together. Why not?
Okay.
This is because we got Plug Love on the turntable.
He's from the Bay.
Yo, Rob, this all about family up in there, baby. All right. Yo, let's go.